Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, after years of marriage and work-related strains, OP discovers his wife's infidelity on the Ashley Madison website. Shocked, he orchestrates a confrontation with her and her lover, ultimately leading to divorces for both couples. Despite challenges, he gains custody of their son and avoids spousal support payments. Grateful to have uncovered her betrayal before deeper entrenchment, he embraces a fresh start. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I met when we were both working in the same office building 7 years ago. She was working a few floors below me, and we would often ride on the elevator together when we got to work. I always thought that she was cute, but I was a little nervous to say anything. As it happened, one Saturday I had to run into the office to grab some things. When I was leaving, I got on the elevator and she was there. Without anybody else around, we struck up some conversation and I jumped on the opportunity to ask her out. Things got serious with us pretty quickly when she got pregnant about a year into our relationship. It wasn't the end of the world for us. It was unexpected, sure, but there was some excitement there as well. Don't get me wrong, now that our son is here, we both love him more than anything in the world. But if we could have had him at a different time, we would have. We had some struggles in the first couple of years of our marriage because I think we both felt like we were forced into it. Even through all of that, I never doubted that she was the one. We both loved each other, and we were dedicated to working through our problems. As we got older, things slowed down for us. She was able to quit her job to focus on raising our son, and I was doing very well at work. One of my coworkers tragically passed away unexpectedly, and while my entire office was mourning the loss, we had to pick up the work left behind. After their death, I had taken on a large sum of their workload. Because of that, I was spending long nights in the office, going in on weekends, and even on some holidays. I cared a lot about my work and I wanted to make sure everything was getting taken care of. Plus, I thought there might be an opportunity for growth if I continued putting the work in. My intimate life with my wife virtually died when that happened. It's not at all like I wanted it to be, but I was so exhausted after every day that the thought never even crossed my mind. I wanted to go home and eat dinner then sleep. It wasn't for lack of trying on my wife's part either. She would tell me that she wanted us to spend more time together, and I would promise her that we would after everything was finished with work. I know that none of this is exactly my fault, but if I were to take any of the blame for what happened, it would be my work. Projects that were supposed to take weeks took months, and I was overworking myself to the point of being physically ill sometimes. I hit my breaking point with work when I realized that I had worked for 22 days without a single day off. I spoke to my boss, and I told them about everything I've been doing. He assured me that my work hadn't gone unnoticed. He gave me a handsome bonus, and I cashed out a week of vacation to take some time to relax. I was excited to be able to decompress at home with my family. However, when I was home and doing nothing, I had all the time and the things that were off with my wife. As much as she wanted us to be intimate just weeks before, she didn't seem to be interested when I was free. Of course, I didn't want to pressure her or push her, so just let it slide. She had been spending a lot of time at the gym working out. I hadn't even noticed the changes in her until I was on my vacation. She had toned up a lot of her body, she got her hair done, and she had a lot of newer clothes. I asked her why she had changed so much, and she got mad at me for only just noticing. But then she told me that she just wanted to feel more confident. I tried to assure her that I thought she was beautiful either way, but I told her that she looked great. During the week, I honestly got a little bored without having anything to do. Tax season was coming up, so I started going through my banking information to prepare. As I was going through, I found some strange charges that I wasn't familiar with. Almost everything I saw was accountable and recognizable in my bank statement except for these few charges. I didn't know what they were, so I Googled the charge name to see what came up, and I thought maybe that would jog my memory. What I discovered was that it was a charge for a website called Ashley Madison. When I first heard the name, it sounded familiar. I knew I had heard it somewhere before, and initially, I thought it was some kind of hair care thing my wife must have gotten. However, when I looked up what it really was, I found out that it was a website for married people to find others interested in affairs. My heart shattered when I read that. I knew that I wasn't the one who subscribed to it. My wife had paid to use an app that would set her up with another person betraying their marriage. I needed to see for myself if she was actively having one. I made an account on the website, making a fake profile to snoop around. Unsurprisingly, there were a lot of other accounts that were clearly fake and phishing for information on the users. After some looking, I found my wife. She had pictures of herself showing her face completely. Anybody that knew her would instantly recognize it was her if they saw it. She was barely being discreet about wanting an affair. On top of that, in some of the pictures she was wearing very little clothes. She was clearly showing off her body to potential affair partners. She stated in her profile that she was looking for fun because she felt like I was ignoring her. I was furious and heartbroken all at the same time. It was very confusing to understand where she was coming from by saying she felt like she was being ignored. I knew that I had been working a lot, but it was out of my control a lot of the time. I took the opportunity to message her and flirt with her to see if she would react. I told her that it was such a shame that her husband was ignoring her because she was flawless and he didn't know what he was missing. Not long after I sent the message, she replied. She was fully responding to every advance. She was being extremely romantic too. She was asking me for pictures, offering to send some in return. I knew then that this wasn't her first conversation on the website. If she had been talking to other men like this, just how far had it gone? When she got home, I pretended like I knew nothing. She had just got back from the gym, so she was hopping in the shower. I took that opportunity to look for the app on her phone and see what she'd been saying. When I found it, I saw dozens of messages between her and other men. The most shocking part of it all was seeing men that she and I both knew talking to her. They were our son's friends' parents, people in the neighborhood, and some people I even worked with. I had no idea that many people would be using a website like this, but we live in a pretty messed up world. One of the guys in our neighborhood that she had been messaging had told her he was fantasizing about her for a long time before he saw her on the app. She said that she felt the same way. From all the messages that I read, it seemed like this was the only person she had made plans to meet up with. It was clear from the context of their messages that they had slept together and were planning on doing it again. On top of that, I found messages with another man that led me to believe that my wife was considering meeting up with him. Right away, I knew that I needed to catch her in the act. She and I married so hastily that there wasn't a prenuptial agreement or anything of the sort. I needed to catch her and get evidence, and then I could proceed with a divorce. So, I used my catfish profile to the best of my ability. The good thing about being married to my wife for as long as I was is that I knew exactly what to say to her to get her to fall for me. Within a few days of me using the app, she was willing to meet up with me. I gave her an address to a hotel and told her to meet me there. I was honestly kind of shocked when she agreed. It was extremely risky to meet up with a strange man on the internet, and she was willing to throw everything away for it. She had no idea who I was. Meanwhile, I had reached out to the wife of the man she slept with, and I told her everything. She was hysterical, and I showed her what I found. I calmed her down and convinced her that we needed to think logically, and we needed to catch them. I helped her make a fake profile too, and we were able to convince her husband to meet at the same hotel. Our plan was in motion, and all we had to do was confront them both. The time came, and we left room keys for both of them at the front desk and told them to grab them and head up. My wife arrived first, and she messaged me to tell me that she was waiting in the room and attached a picture of her in her lingerie. The guy she had been sleeping with arrived next and was clearly shocked to see my wife there. After a minute of them being in the room alone together, both his wife and I went and joined them. When we opened the door, both of them were silent as they watched us. My wife grabbed the blanket from the bed and tried to cover herself because she was half naked. They tried to act like we were in the wrong for catfishing them, but they didn't have a leg to stand on. I told my wife that I was done with her and that she had really broken my heart with her actions. I could tell that she felt guilty about it, and she tried to once again put the blame on me for ignoring her when I was working. I told her that didn't excuse what she did. Both I and my neighbor's wife filed for divorce not long after that. We had mountains of evidence of their affairs against them. Apparently, he had been with many women since downloading the app. I was able to come out on top during the divorce. My wife didn't work, so spousal support was the biggest argument that we had, but my lawyer was able to get me out of payments. I got custody of our son, but she has visitations of him. The reasoning for that was that she was so easily convinced to meet up with a stranger online. They were able to convince someone that she could potentially bring a harmful person home. I feel like I'm picking up and starting anew with my life now. It's daunting, but I'm honestly glad that I found out about her true colors before we were 15 years into our marriage. Today's second story. In this story, OP plans a camping trip for his extroverted wife's 30th birthday to salvage their relationship. During the trip, she gravitates towards another man's RV, sparking a confrontation where he discovers her infidelity. Hurt and betrayed, he decides to divorce her. Despite the painful experience, he resolves to grow and become a better partner in future relationships, learning from the ordeal. Now let's get into the story. I, 38 male, decided to take my wife of 5 years camping for her 30th birthday. She was an outdoorsy extrovert, and I was and am an introvert with a healthy combination of lazy and active tendencies. A month prior to our camping trip, my wife had started harping on me to get more active and thoughtful in our relationship. I was a little surprised when she said it because it sounded like she was getting bored of me. She did message a lot of people on a regular basis and even made friends in public. I didn't understand how or why she did it. I wanted to live off the grid in a cabin in the woods, but I knew that wasn't her dream. She worked part-time on her laptop as a writer, usually going to a park or somewhere outdoors to work. Meanwhile, I was the breadwinner, raking in piles of cash with my hard labor and industrial installation career. At first, she would always offer me a back rub when I got home, sometimes even a full body massage. It was amazing. I felt like she really cared about me and how hard I worked. Eventually, though, she stopped offering and started asking more of me in my time off. I tried to tell her how I felt, but she wouldn't listen unless I was giving in to one of her requests. These requests didn't seem like much to her, but they were to me. Being an introvert, I did not want to go to the parties she was invited to. Somehow she was always invited on trips or to people's houses, and I never wanted to go. A trip with just us would have been fine, but to go to a stranger's house and sleep over seemed like a big uncomfortable thing to me. I hate chit-chat, so to compromise, I told her about the birthday trip I planned for us. Just me and her spending 4 days on Assateague Island camping in her fold-down RV. She was ecstatic. She loved horses and camping, but never imagined traveling there and making it happen. In the weeks leading up to this trip, she started giving me massages again. At the time, I had no idea what my wife was capable of, and just how much she convinced herself there were other men out there for her to find. On the island, our campsite was no more than 70 yards away from another RV. It was bigger and fancier, way more than I wanted or needed. Of course, my wife was impressed. When the ponies came over to us, they didn't linger for long. They headed for the neighboring RV because they already had a campfire going. My wife used this as an excuse to go introduce herself. She asked me to go with her, but I didn't want to. I told her I didn't mind if she went over to chat and told her I loved her. She was gone for an hour before I decided to go over there. As I approached, I noticed it was a single attractive man that my wife was chatting away with. In my mind, I was wondering why he needed such an obnoxious RV if it was only him. She was laughing and blushing, and it was clear to me she really liked this guy. Not only that, but she looked at me like she was disappointed when I finally decided to show up. She hesitated to introduce me as her husband, and that was the greatest slap in the face. I told her I wanted her to come back to the RV with me, and she asked why. I was so embarrassed she was challenging me. I just told her I have a surprise for her because I knew it was the only way she'd come with me. Even then, she told AP she'd be right back. When we got back to our site, the horses followed me. My wife was thrilled by that. The horses surrounded me, as I firmly reminded her I was doing this all for her. She was my world, and I wanted to show her I could be her husband without being an extrovert. I reminded her how well we loved each other over the past 5 years and how I could continue being the man for her. Then I asked her why she even wanted to talk to this guy, or have so many friends or go to parties. I asked what valuable fulfillment it gave her in her heart, and why it made her feel good to smear on makeup, put on a dress, and go converse with people, even if I wasn't there. She was surprised and a little offended, but when she tried to explain the pleasure she got from being an extrovert, she only sounded egotistical and shallow. She realized how she sounded and got frustrated with me, concluding that she was just going to make friends and talk to whoever she wanted, whether I approved or not. She tried to make it sound like I was controlling her, but I wasn't. I always let her do whatever it was she wanted, even if it didn't make sense to me. Throughout our marriage, she never cheated on me or gave me any reason to believe I couldn't trust her. Although I never did check her phone, I wasn't confrontational and never felt like I needed to seek who she was talking to. I really didn't know just how heartless you could be. She put in her earbuds and sat with the horses on our site. I was relieved she didn't go back to AP out of spite, so I started our campfire, hoping it would make her happy. Eventually, we went to bed in silence. My wife curled up alone on the far side of the bed. I was glad to get some sleep and a fresh start in the morning. I had no idea I was about to wake up much earlier than expected. It was still dark out when I turned over to spoon my wife, and she was gone. Instantly, I was thrown into a nightmare. I instantly pictured her with AP in his RV, but I spared a few seconds to check her bathroom. She wasn't there. I put on my robe and slippers, raced over to the RV and listened. As soon as I heard the slightest noise from inside, I banged on the door. I heard my wife gasp, followed by some shuffling. As soon as AP opened the door, I pushed my way in while yelling for her. She was breathless and frantic, adjusting her pajamas and walking out from the small bedroom. When I could see her face, she looked terrified. Just then, AP shoved me really hard straight out the door of his RV. I landed on my back and it hurt bad, but I still got to my feet. This was when my wife absolutely broke down. She started crying harder than I ever saw in my life, and she was screaming at AP for hurting me. I started walking back to her side, and she flocked to my side, trying to make herself useful by holding up my arm. I yanked away and told her I was a man, and I didn't need her to survive. She could barely speak, but she was saying sorry and stuttering to explain why she was in AP's RV. She couldn't form a sentence, and she'd buy herself time by sobbing. She knew she was guilty, she just didn't want to say it. She wanted to lie and cover it up. I cut to the chase and told her I knew she slept with him. I knew she was willing to sleep with him and sneak off for me to defile our marriage. I told her we were over and I would be filing for divorce. As I said it, I knew I was making this decision quickly, but I also knew she did this to me, and it was reality now. I knew my logic was sound, and I knew I would stand firm in my decision. My wife started hyperventilating, and it was hard to see her that way. I really wanted to make her feel better, because all she wanted was me, and I wanted her, but I knew I couldn't. We were stuck together, at least for the night, because I needed to sleep before driving us home. At this point, she was willing to do anything to show me respect and humility, so she left me alone to sleep. She wouldn't have done anything for my forgiveness, which is such a shame because she should have considered how much I mattered to her before she decided to cheat on me with a camping stranger. On the car ride home, it was silent and awkward. I thought about how I had noticed the downfall in her behavior but never imagined she'd do this. I had tried to talk to her about things before, but it never helped because she wasn't willing to change her perspective or let what I was saying sink in. When we got home, she refused to pack her stuff. She did not want to tell her father what happened. She didn't want anyone to know or get involved in our business. I had no choice but to call her dad. Her dad helped her pack her stuff, and it was like she was a child. It was disturbing. I trusted her father enough to leave them to it while I went for a drive out of all the people she talked to on her cell phone. I didn't know any of them personally. I didn't know which of her friends would actually come help her deck her stuff, but in the end, the answer was no one. None of her friends were really friends. They were all superficial and absorbed in their own lives except for one thing. They all thrived on the drama. When they got wind of my wife's infidelity and divorce in which she lost everything, that's when some of them messaged her to get the scoop and tell her she was right and totally justified in her actions. And some of them scolded her and called her what she really was. Some of them stopped talking to her completely, which included one of her closest friends. She was so heartbroken that she stopped writing and earning an income. I can only hope she learned her lesson. I hope she realizes that she was obsessed with the wrong things and convinced herself over time that she didn't need me or deserve someone else. Well, she got her opportunity, except now she can't find someone else. As much as it hurt to let her go, accept what happened and start over, I know I grew from this experience. She was only my first attempt at marriage and won't be the last. I take what I can from those years in my life and let it fuel me to be better, more selfless, understanding, observant, and willing to love my partner in her love language.